Welcome. Today we're going to go through the MediaStack project, which is a Docker-based project, and it is a series of different applications designed to run in Docker in order to get you up and running with the MediaStack as quickly as possible. So what is Docker and why use it? So many people would be aware of virtual computers or virtual machines where we run a computer, a full operating system inside another computer. Now that's a virtual computer or a virtual machine that has the operating system and applications. Now Docker is sort of similar, however, without the overhead of a operating system. It uses the standard operating system, either Linux or either your Windows computer, even Apple, and you can run Docker, but the applications will run exactly the same on all the other computers. It's just that Docker allows you to run those applications virtualized. So you just choose the applications you want to work together and then virtualize those applications. And the configurations are pretty much the same, irregardless of what computer or host operating system that you're using. Docker takes care of that. So what we're going to do is have a look at the applications. So the MediaStack project has picked a bunch of different applications that are most common out there for people to start off their MediaStack. And what we're going to do is run you through that and get these up and running so that you can start getting your MediaStack running and configured and start hosting your files. So without further ado, we'll go across to Ubuntu. I have set up a process guide that is here, and we'll run through some of this, and I'll make this available when the video is posted. However, we're going to go across to Docker. So go across to Docker and go to their installation for Ubuntu, because we're doing this on Ubuntu. And what we need to do to start with is uninstall any previous versions or any old versions. So we just go to the uninstall old versions. We copy this command here. That's been copied. And then we paste that to our console. And that's removing any previous install versions. And it looks like there's not much there. However, we also want to go down the bottom to uninstall the Docker engine. So we do these commands one at a time. Paste. And that will then remove all of the Docker engine. We'll go get the other commands while that's running. We'll copy the second one here. And we'll paste that in, we run that, and then we run this one, paste it, there we go. We've removed everything there that we have in Docker. So we go back to the Docker installation guide for Ubuntu, and now what we want to do is we want to do a fresh installation from brand new. And we want to install from the apt repository. We want to set up the repository so that it points to Docker's official repository for Docker. So what we do is we copy this. Okay, we're doing the install apt. Okay, we've copied that. We paste it in here and we execute that. While that's running, we'll duck across and we'll get the second command. And we paste that. That'll install the applications. The first command just set up the app repositories. Now we're installing it. There is a third command here, which is just, the hello world, the general hello world, which is common to most development tools. So we're not going to actually run that because it installs a package. But what we can do is just come back here and we should be able to do a sudo docker ps, and that will just show us that the processes, there's nothing running because we haven't actually installed anything, but the daemon is installed and it's running as expected. So the commands here, I've just copied those commands in here. We could have just ran them from this file, but I just wanted to show you where those commands are located in case you want to do it yourself. Now, if we're running a brand new installation, everything's nice and clean. However, if we decide, or if we get down to the point where we have really made a mess of our Docker and we don't understand where we are and we're just, pulling hair, then what we can do is just run this command or these series of commands, and this will just stop and remove all of the Docker containers, stop them. And then what this will do is remove all the container files, remove all the images, the volumes, and the networks. So we can run this. It's not going to really do much because we're not running any at the moment. We've installed none. But this will just like clear out or zeroize our Docker. Now you want to be careful about running this once the Docker is fully set up, because it will take everything out. But we're going to set up the MediaStack with two very important folders. So we're going to set up a folder where we store all of our media. Now that's outside of Docker. Docker can access it, but if we were to delete Docker stuff, all of our media stays there. And this other folder, what we're going to do is we're going to set this one, and all of our application data for all of our Docker apps will sit there. Again, that is also outside of Docker. So if we were to run these commands and delete the Docker containers, all of the container application configuration will stay there. It's persistent. So if you remove stuff, it's okay. You won't actually lose anything there. You can reinstall it and get yourself back up and running. Now we're going to run Docker. We're going to run Docker as the user Docker, and we're going to create a group called MediaStack, and that's going to allow us to access the files using Docker, but also access the files with our own user account. And that's sort of important because it becomes a bit problematic when you put the files in your home directory and Docker can't access them. And then you've got other permission issues if you're trying to access a folder inside Docker. So we're doing this in a specific way so that both you and Docker can share, have the right permissions to that. So in order to do that, we're going to first set up a Docker user. Now we might get an error on this because we're creating a Docker user which may already exist. Once we installed it up here before, we may actually already have a Docker user and also a Docker group, but this just will set them up anyway. So this will set up a Docker user and group with these commands. Okay, and it says here one already exists because we just ran that one there and then we ran the second one. So it's okay if it fails, but what we do know is that it does exist. So what we now do is we'll set up the group. So there you go. We've done MediaStack group, and we will add people into MediaStack. So we're going to add Docker into MediaStack, and we're going to add username, whichever your username is, also into MediaStack. So we're going to copy that, paste that, and then there we go. And the last thing we're going to do here is we are going to set up the two folders, or one folder and two subfolders. So if we go out to the root here, we do an ls-la, and there we are. There is MediaStack, and if we go inside MediaStack, there we are. There's two folders. Now at the moment, root owns those folders because I ran it with the sudo command, so root actually owns those folders. We're going to fix the permissions up on that shortly, but at the moment what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the permissions on the app data so that our user account can put some files in there that we're going to need. So I'm just going to do a sudo chmod, no I'm not, I'm going to do chown, use your username here, app data, and we're going to say that the username will own app data. So now if we have a look at that, there we go. You can see here that we've allowed the username to access this because we're going to start copying some files in there to start with before we take full command of the folder. All right, so we've got to this location now and we're ready to start getting the MediaStack set up from the GitHub. So we go across to the GitHub location where is over here, and we go right up to the top. And what we want to do is just download the whole repository. It's only a few little meg. It's only text files. That's all it is. So we download that. Okay. Oh, it's not even meg. It's 80 kilobyte. 81 if we round up. So there's a few different folders here. And what we'll do is we'll just quickly go across to get a bit of an explanation on which ones these are. I think it's down here. All right. So if you're not certain what you want to do or how you want to do it, the folders which are here, there's full VPN and minimum VPN and minimum VPN. So anything that says full VPN, all of the applications will be protected through the VPN tunnel that you set up. So these two will be fully protected. So you'll have full privacy with all of the data that goes out your network. These two will only set up a VPN and tunnel the torrent data. So torrent data will go through this. That's the only thing that will go through the VPN. And these will be the full VPN. Now, if it says multiple and single, the multiple just means that you've got one file for each application that you're setting up. And if you go to a single, it means that this file here has the configuration in one file for all of those applications. Now, if you're a new user to Docker, I highly recommend that you go the multiple ones, because if you only want to have one application running, then you just install or run the application, which we'll do a bit later. Just get the one up and running. If you're going to use multiple, there's a lot of work to do to maintain that. It will get you up and running properly, but if you want to add stuff and remove stuff later, there's a fair bit of technical detail in there that will might confuse some new people to Docker, but you're welcome to go whichever way you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a copy of these YAML files, and we're just going to copy them, Control-C, and we're going to go into the MediaStack folder, and we're going to go into app data. So just in the root of app data, we're going to paste the files here that we copied before. Now the README, don't need the README, you go to the web page and read that. Okay, so what we do have to do is edit this config file. All right, this is where the environment variables are that get injected into all of the other configurations. So we put all of the variables into this, and then all of these other applications, when they are executed, they all take the variables from this one. So what we want to do to start with, we created the Docker users before, so we just want to do a ID Docker to get the number for Docker. You can see there, Docker was created with user ID 1001. Now the group ID for Docker is 984, but we're going to run with the MediaStack, because inside MediaStack group was your user account and Docker. And we can validate that by just doing a grep of, we'll just do stack of the groups. And there you go. So MediaStack there, we just did a grep. So we didn't have to write the whole thing, but there you go. MediaStack has Docker and username in it. So we want to use user ID and group ID, which we will set up. We'll just go down and do it now because we just ran those commands. So user ID, group ID. Don't change the UMask if you don't know what you're doing. It's more for advanced users. All right, so we go back up the top. I might expand this a little bit so it's a bit easier to read. So this is just the name of the project. What that does is it sets up a stack inside Docker. And then when you go into Portainer or other other Docker tools and like graphical tools, you'll see all of the applications, the virtual applications, Docker applications, sitting inside the MediaStack. So the local network is the network that you're running the Docker server on. So, or the Ubuntu server, which is for our network here, it is 10.168.1.0/24. So that's the network. And the IP address of this Linux computer is 10.168. Did I miss that? No, sorry, I thought I made a mistake. .1.25. So that's the IP address of this computer. So we're going to, it's important that we put this in because when we set up the network inside Docker, this is the network that will set up inside Docker, and then the Gluetun container will pass the traffic from the Docker network into your local network so it can then go out through your home internet. Okay, so we're going to set up the folders here. So our media was MediaStack in media, and configuration data was MediaStack app data. Okay, so we've set the user ID and the group ID. The time zone, you can change the time zone to whatever you want. You just got to make sure it's in the right format that is valid to the time zone. Here, we're going to use NordVPN. You can use any VPN, sorry. You can use any VPN if you want. Just go across to the Gluetun webpage, and this talks about the providers and how to set them up, and also setting up the passwords. So I'll come back in and do that later when you're not looking, because I don't want that shared out on the internet. Now, you can set up your VPN to terminate in certain areas, but that depends on how your VPN provider is configured. But in the simplest term, if you just want to send it to a certain region or a country, you just edit this. But if you really wanted to drill down, you can fill all the information in these and really go to a certain spot if you want to break out at a certain spot. Now, this is just for custom configuration. If you have a custom configuration, it'll get stored in the custom folder. If you're using WireGuard, you can set your WireGuard configurations there. Just remember that you just need to go across to Gluetun and just have a check to how it's all set up. Now, these are all of the ports for all the applications that we're running. So if you find that you have a clash, for example, if Filebot or Homepage or any of the applications share the same web port, when you try to connect to that on your home network, it's going to clash and it's not going to work. So you can change the ports. I've kept to the common ports here as best possible. However, some of the ports I've had to change slightly because there's been a clash, but I've gone with the best I can, like the qBit torrent. I think that clashes with one of the others. So I've just made a change so that they don't clash. Now, if you're doing a reverse proxy and you're going to connect to your home network from the internet, say you've gone out and you need to connect to it, you can use the reverse proxy that was part of Swag application. However, if you want to do if you're using web server, if you're already using a web server on port 80 and 443, you can change these ports, and then you just have to do a port redirect coming in from your router so they go to the correct ports here. Now, that's discussed in the guide, so you can go to the MediaStack.guide and get more details there. Now, we're not going to go into the reverse proxy configuration. There's a lot there, but the good thing about Docker is you can make any configuration changes here now on the fly, and then all you do is you delete the container, redeploy the container, and the new configuration would be picked up. So that is a really good thing about Docker. It's really, really simple to make a change and redeploy that and get that back out. So now that we've done the configuration, we're going to save that, and then we're going to exit to the command prompt again. Okay, so we've closed that, and now we're back on this guide. We'll just move this across to the side again. Okay, so we've edited the config, the environment file, so that all the variables are set. Now, if we go back across to the GitHub page, it talks here about the folders. Now, these are quite important, and this is one good thing that I think the project has done, is that it has put in the folder structure, which we're about to create, so that all of the folders are underneath one main folder. So we've chosen here to go MediaStack, and that's on the host computer. So that's on the Ubuntu computer here in this example. We're going to use MediaStack there, and all of the directory structure on your computer will be under MediaStack. Now, with your applications inside the Docker containers, they will be mapped to data, or Filebot for the Filebot container. But all the other containers will have this media structure. They'll have data, media, torrents, use, net, and watch. All of those will be inside the containers. These will be on your host computer, and they will be mapped to each other. For example, the Radarr application will be checking movies, and they'll map down to the local computer. All right, so that's roughly how the media structure works, and is how the containers will share data with the host. So what we do is we take this, we copy this, and then we take it across to our section. I've already copied it here. So this is what I've just copied from the website, and we need to edit it to make sure that we put our media and our data directories in here, and also the user ID and the group ID, which we did down on this command. So we grab that now all the way down here, Control C, and we're just going to paste it, and we're going to hit enter, and then we're going to do an ls-la, and there we are. Docker MediaStack is the user and the group name, and if we have a look at app folder, there we go. So these are all of the folders that we just created, and these are all of the YAML and the environment variable that we copied across through the copy and paste here. So we can now see we have added the folders, and there's all the files. They're all in the app folder directory. So we'll minimize that. So the next thing we do on that command is we go down, we're getting close. Now, the next part is to pull all of the Docker images. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to run this command. It's just a loop. All it does is for every YAML file, so for every file here, it's going to go through and it's going to download the image that correlates to each of the applications. So this is pretty much pre-downloading them before we deploy them. It just means that we can go and have a bit of a coffee, because this will take a few minutes. So we grab that. Now, when we run these commands, anytime we run a command, we must be in the app data folder. So if we have a look, here, we must be where the YAML and the env files are, because that's where the configuration is. So when we execute these, we've got to be located in that folder. If we're not in that folder, these commands will not work. Now it's going away, and that loop, which is just here, all it's doing is using a Docker command to pull the name of the file with the configuration file, and it's just pulling the command down. All right, so that's what it's doing now. So there's about 26 different Docker applications that are going to come down if you choose to pull them all down. We will for this demonstration. However, they're all going to pull down and they're all going to take a little bit of time, probably about 20 minutes to download. So if you've got things to do, now's a good time to go off and make a coffee and come back in about 20 minutes. We'll pause the video here and we'll come back when they're all downloaded. Okay, now that we've downloaded all of the images, we're going to deploy them into Docker and create the containers. Now we're going to go back to the GitHub page to get all of the commands. These are the commands here. We've copied them over to the text file. However, the first one we're going to deploy is Gluetun. And the reason that we're going to deploy Gluetun first is Gluetun sets up the network and the VPN that all the other containers are going to use. So when when Gluetun sets up its network, it will set up the 172 network, which was the one that we put into the environment variable configuration previously. And then the VPN will filter everything through Gluetun out to the internet to establish some privacy for you. So we grab the first one and we're going to deploy the Gluetun container. Now that will deploy, and you'll see here that the Gluetun container has been created. The network was created, the container was deployed and started, and now we'll check the logs to make sure that it has a VPN established. Now the VPN in the configuration said that we were going to go to Europe, so let's see where we got to. So sudo docker logs Gluetun gives us the logs, and there you see that we have an IP address and we actually come out in France. So as per the configuration, that's the IP address now that we will be seeing if we were to go to what's my IP address or something like that, it'll come up with that IP address. So we're now coming out in France. So now that's that done, we can now establish or deploy the rest of the images, which is quite easily. Grab all of these commands and we're just going to paste them in here all at once and hit enter and watch the work done. So as it deploys, you'll see a little warning notice. Don't worry about the warning notice. This is just coming from the fact that we are using the project command with Docker, and we did that for a certain reason so that it puts them all into the same stack. So when we open up Portainer and we go into that, which we'll show you, you'll see the containers have all been deployed under a single stack. All right, so that's up and running. Now what we're going to do is we'll just move on to the next step. If at any point in time you have issues or problems with file permissions, it is a common thing that people do, then we can just run this command. And this command, all it does is just sets the modifies the recursive directory from MediaStack and all the folders and directories underneath it. So it sets the permissions, it sets the ownership, and then it also sets the permissions on all of the directories and the files underneath that. So we're going to deploy that. And what that does, it just baselines all of the files and directories to make sure they've all got the same permissions. So that's running. Now if we do a directory listing, you'll see here, just like it said in the command, that Docker and MediaStack, so Docker and MediaStack is the owner and the group. and because your username is inside the MediaStack group, when you try to access it, you'll have access to those files just as well as Docker. So you shouldn't have any conflicts between your user account and the Docker containers accessing these files. Now, that's it. We're pretty much finished setting up the MediaStack. However, what we need to do now is go and have a look at the applications. So if we go back to the folder where we, if we go into downloads, where we downloaded the stack, you'll find here, I think it's this one, internal. Okay, we want the one that says internal. We're going to edit this. We want to edit with a text editor. And what we want to do is we want to do a find and replace. Control C. So, Control C and then Control H is find and replace. Now, we're going to replace this with the IP address of this computer. So what we're going to do is put, that was a 10.168.1.25. Oh, there's a 0 there. It doesn't need a 0. I bumped that. So we're going to do a find and replace. Now, we're going to save that. And we're going to load this bookmark file into the web browser that we use for everyday, home access in order to connect to these applications, and they've got the right ports already assigned to them. You don't need to install this on the Ubuntu machine if it's actually you're running as a server, unless you access it from that web browser. Otherwise, you can just do it from your own computer. But we just go in here into Google Chrome, whichever browser you're running. You just go Bookmarks, Import Bookmarks and Settings, and we want to choose a file. And it's going to come up here because there's a recent one. It just comes in here. It's in the Downloads folder wherever you saved it. And now we're going to import that, and we now have the MediaStack, all of the applications and all the bookmarks here. So what we do now is we can right click on this and go open all in new window. And here we are. We have all of the applications up and running. So here's the MediaStack guide. You can go here and continue doing the configuration, or you can go to Portainer. Now, Portainer sometimes doesn't work, depending on how much time you take between deploying Portainer and logging into it. It's got I think it's about a 5 or 10 minute security feature where it will lock you out. So I might try and put a password in here. Okay, we're in. If you do get the error that says you've taken too long and you can't get in, all you simply need to do is go and get you just run this command. You just do a sudo docker container stop Portainer, because that's the name of the Portainer is the name of the Docker container, Portainer. So we do a stop and a start, effectively restarting it, and then you'll be able to get back in. So if Portainer has locked you out, all you have to do is stop the service and restart the service, and you'll be able to get back into that page to configure your password. All right, there we are. There is Portainer. We have the latest version because we just downloaded it, so we can get rid of that. And you don't actually update it in here. There'll be a different way to update your images. But here we are. We jump into the local machine and we go into stacks. And here's the MediaStack. And all of the applications are deployed underneath it. So if we just expand this out, you'll see there's about 26 or 27 images. And there you are, you're all set up, ready to go. So Portainer is just a graphical way of having a look at the containers, the images, and everything that you've deployed. So the networks, everything's in here. What's happened there? If we go to volumes, you'll see no volumes. No volumes have been deployed inside Docker. because all the volumes are mounted on your hard drive. So when you go in here, you're not going to lose any data because there's no volumes set up inside Docker. They're all mapped to your hard drive, and that's how all the persistent configuration stays there. So there's Jellyfin, Plex, Jellyfin, and all the applications that we just installed. Now it's just a matter of going to the applications and configuring them as you need and getting the system up and running. Okay, so one thing that I just want to finish off on is that we have a look at the guide. Before you do anything, I strongly suggest that you use Filebot or another program to sort your media. So if your media is pretty poor and you don't have a good structure for your media, for your music, your videos and your TV series, if they're a poor media structure, then these other applications like Radarr and Sonarr are not going to pick them up right. So the best thing to do is do yourself a favor and use Filebot, or just make sure that everything is named correctly with the right formats. And you'll find on the how-to guide is that they've got details. We've got details here about doing, where is it, preparing your media library. So yeah, prepare your media library, and there's, you know, media naming conventions. So you can put these into Filebot and off you go, and all your media will be sorted before you move it into the R stack. All right, so there we are. You have it. Everything is up and running, and you now have your MediaStack running. Go across there. We also have a subreddit called MediaStack. If you have any questions or queries, you can head over there and ask the community and get any assistance that you need. All right, all the best. Peace out. Thank you.